people for this session as well, and I was not able to get any. So, you know, the session was how to reach labor. And I was asking labor people just to come and say, these are our concerns. If you want us to support this, what do we have to do? And I guess labor has always been a very closed group. I mentioned this the other day, that labor has had a history of being attacked from both sides. That they were always attacked from the right, they were always attacked from the left. The current head of the Allegheny County Labor Council is a firefighter, and he's at least been very nice to me, and I think is always very busy and didn't take it seriously. But the previous head of the Labor Council was with the Building Trades Union. And I gave him my name, and he said, "Didn't you oppose the stadium tax?" Because the Building Trades Council, you know, if you want to know where the stadium creates jobs, it creates jobs for union people in the building trades. And I said, well, we were only against it being a sales tax. We would have been fine with it being a land value tax. And he said, we're not interested, and hung up. It was just like, it was that, you opposed us. We don't talk to you. Labor is very us-them oriented that way. So, so the problem now is that we have a room full of Georges, and the question before us is how to reach non-Georges. And one thing I've realized over the years is if you want to understand how to reach non-Georges, the last people you want to ask is Georges.
Well,
I
don't necessarily. I think that's what attracted me to George. You know what I'm saying? I'm a labor guy. I think everybody here has
microphone, perhaps.
Yeah. Did somebody run mics up? Well, just wait a second.
Thank you. I'm not really trying to oppose what you're saying. I just want to say that everybody here is labor. You can really probably ask us the things that we have suffered with and what we would like to change, and that's what attracted me to George, and has kept me really wanting to know him more, is because what he has done for labor, you know, and the struggles that it wasn't even just for labor. It was for the whole people as a whole. So I feel you though about the attachment that you need to have them come together with you.
Yeah. Now, Dave Wetzel was a union representative at some level. I forget which.
Shop steward at Heathrow Airport.
Okay.
Shop steward at Heathrow Airport.
And I think we have some other people here who are at least active in unions. And those people might know a little more than the rest of us about the idiosyncrasies of what turns union people on and off about what we might have to say. You know, certainly I don't want to talk about being a geo-libertarian to unions, because they equate libertarians with privatizing everything. But and I think this will be like very much from the beginning. I don't know that I have a whole lot to present in advance other than to repeat what I said the other day, which was that labor has been undermined. You know, we had anarcho-communist groups infiltrating labor groups, and labor is like very paranoid of people, even people who say they're strongly pro-labor, pushing things that can give labor a bad reputation. And that might be a little more of a problem in the United States than it is in Europe. But in general, I think the question is, basically, what do union, I don't want to use the word labor because you're right, we are all labor. And Terrence Powderly, when he was head of the, when he founded the, or when he didn't found it, but when he became the leader of the Knights of Labor and greatly increased its number, he said anybody who produces wealth is labor. And so anybody can be a member of our union except bankers and lawyers. But yeah, Dave, you...
Shall I give 5 minutes about what we did in the UK?
Sure.
Okay. In the UK, our Georgist movement, as it was in sort of about 1980, was very much a movement that ran classes and printed books, was academic in that sense, but was not, in my mind, very proactive, not going out into the world advocating the Georgist message. And so I started a group. My father died, and we sold a house worth about £15,000 and shared it between myself and my two sisters. And some of that money, not a fortune, but some of that money, we put together to start an organisation called the Labour Land Campaign. And that wasn't to be the Labour Party land campaign, but the Labour Movement land campaign. So it should include cooperators, trade unionists, members of progressive parties, not specifically Labour Party. We've had members, I'm personally now a member of the Green Party, and we've got many members who are in the Green Party. We have members who are in the British Communist Party and the Liberal Party, and members in none of those, but who are trade unionists or cooperators, or they're active. The only thing we ask them to sign up to is they support the idea of land value tax. We don't mention Henry George, we just say you agree that you support land value tax. So we launched our new organisation in 1983 in a meeting in the House of Commons. We thought that'll give it a bit of status. We got an MP to book the room for us for free, and we had about 30 people turn up. Amongst those people were people campaigning against buildings going up in their neighbourhoods. One group was People Before Profit in Hammersmith, who were against a building being ripped down around the transit station at Hammersmith, and new high-rise skyscrapers going up. So they were there. We had a smattering, perhaps 3 or 4 economists. A couple of them were lecturers, a couple of them were working in private industry. We had people that were doing self-sufficiency farming and appreciated the land question. We had people like myself who were Georgists, and I learnt my Georgism sitting round the breakfast table at home, because my father was an old Georgist who before the war used to go to Hyde Park Corner on a soapbox and advocate land value tax. And so a complete mixture of different architects. There were 2 architects, one of them a member of the Communist Party, who's still a member today. He's in his 90s and he's still a member, not active now, but so a complete mixture of people, very small nucleus. We elected a committee, and I was elected chair. They've now pushed me upstairs because they wanted a good chair, so I'm the president, and we have much better people chairing it. And we were meeting in County Hall, which was the the City Hall, if you like, where I was an elected councillor at the time. And we started off by just producing a few leaflets and visiting organisations, by not waiting for them to invite us. We were contacting organisations and saying, we want to come to you. And that has been going on, sometimes at a high level. When I moved to Cornwall, it was a very low level, very low key, but we kept it going. We used to, nearly every Labour Party conference, have a fringe meeting, and if we got as many people as you've got in this room, we were really lucky. You know, out of 3,000 odd delegates, we were lucky if we managed to get enough people in a room. And it was always expensive because the delegates would only come if you offered them free beer and free food. Yeah, I'm a great believer in free beer for the workers. There's a song about that. And we did articles wrote articles in other people's magazines. Trade unions, most trade unions used to have anyway a monthly magazine. Now it's probably quarterly because they're making cuts. There's weekly papers, and the Morning Star is a daily communist newspaper read by a lot of trade unionists who are not necessarily communists, but they want an unbiased newsread. Even the BBC is sort of against us. So, we've kept the membership small. I'd like to say deliberately, but it's a failure on our part. We haven't got over more than about 150 members. But I think we shout above our level, you know. We go to conferences that are free, so usually that's a trade union conference, and we'll have a stall, a book stall at a trade union conference. Most of the literature is free, we give away, but we have a huge banner that we take on marches and demonstrations, so people read about us, they hear about us, and we make appointments with politicians, general secretaries or others within trade unions. The cooperative, we have a cooperative party which is a part of the Labour Party but has its own separate secretariat and membership. You can be a member of the Co-op Party and not be a member of the Labour Party, but I now can't be a member of the Co-op Party because I'm a member of the Green Party that runs candidates against Labour. So it's like a sister party to the Labour Party. And if you ever see on TV, sometimes an MP will be speaking and it'll say Labour Co-op, and that's what it is. They're members of the Labour Party and the Co-op Party. Our first success was getting the Co-op Party to adopt land value tax, and that was in the late 1990s, and we've lobbied a load of MPs of all parties. I've sat and spoken with Tory MPs. Michael Gove, one of them, he was in the last government and he's now just been reappointed by Boris. He's a Brexiteer. I went and saw him when Blair was Prime Minister, so he was in the Conservative shadow cabinet at the time, and his secretary said, well, you've got 40 minutes because he has another appointment at 11 o'clock. So I went to see him in the House of Commons. Some people said, well, it's not worth, you can't put the case over in 40 minutes. But I always, you know, somebody gives me 5 minutes, I'm happy to talk to them. So I went and talked to him. I went and talked to him for 40 minutes, and it got to 11 o'clock. And I said, Michael, I said, it's 11 o'clock. You're the more important person here. I said, oh no, I said, you're a very important person here. You've got another appointment. He says, no, Dave, on this subject, you're the important person. Let's run on another half hour. And so I managed to get over an hour with him. And I went back to a Labour Party meeting that night. I said, I'm going to have to stop meeting these Tories. I'm beginning to like them. But there was another one. God, can I think of his name? But anyway, it was also, he actually stood as leader and didn't win. And we were on a public platform talking about transport. And it was a conference, about 200 delegates, and he had just published a book, and it was the time that your shuttle crashed with school teacher on board. And in his book, it's all about privatisation being much better than state control. And when it came to my turn to speak after him, I said, well, it looks as if it's going to be an interesting book you've got. I'll read a copy because you've given it to me. I'd never pay for it. And but to be honest, if I was going up to space today, I'd much rather be in a Soyuz than I would be in one of your shuttles. And
don't have shuttles running anymore.
And not now. I'm talking about the time when the one crashed. And he afterwards, over a cup of coffee, he'd listened to my speech. And that's one of the reasons I go, because it isn't just talking to the audience, it's talking to the other people on the panel who tend to be sort of important people, and they're the ones I want to hear the message. So he said, why don't you come and meet me and we'll discuss it further? And we did, and we spoke for about nearly 2 hours in his office in the House of Commons. And oh, John Redwood, his name is. It's come to me, an age thing. Don't worry about it. Yeah, John Redwood. So I spent a couple of hours with him, and at the end of it, he said, because what I say, you see, this is why I hate it when Georges attacks socialists, because for the very thing that you've just been talking about, if I read something that you've written and it's tax socialism, well, that's not for me. That Henry George is nothing to do with me. That's for non-socialists. That's for capitalists. That's for libertarians, dare I say. We don't have any libertarians in the UK. I have to explain, when I talk to an audience in the UK, I have to explain what a libertarian is. Probably I don't give a very good explanation, as I'm an old-fashioned syndicalist myself. But I always say, it doesn't matter what your politics are, your party politics. It doesn't matter what sort of government you want, whether you want a conservative government or a socialist government or a liberal government. Whatever it is, if you introduce land value tax, it will help you with your objectives. A land value tax is not on the political spectrum. A land value tax is just common sense, and it will help any government in the same way as perhaps, I don't know, watering pipes going to people's houses. Helps anybody, irrespective of their politics. And so anyway, at the end of this discussion, I hadn't attacked the Tories at all. He knew where I came from. I'm a left-wing socialist, more left-wing than Jeremy Corbyn, so he knew where I stood. And he said to me, I'm interested, Dave, but the problem is, how do we get from where we are now, with people owning their own houses, to get into your ideal system of collecting the land of rent and not having any other taxes except for, I say, behavioural taxes and taxes that are intended to save the planet, like mineral taxes. And that is a problem, isn't it? How do we get from there from here where we are now to where we want to go? And my answer to that is that I wrote a paper, 2011, how do you get turkeys to vote for Christmas? How do you get householders who own their home to vote for land value?
You serve ham.
Exactly. And my ham is from the experience we had at Transport for London. We went to the government to build Crossrail, and they said, no, you can't have a land value tax, and no, we're not going to pay for it out of general taxation. So Bob Kiley, our American Transport Commissioner, earning about $1 million a year, we were paying him, he and the team he brought over from America were in favour of LVT. The government didn't want that. So they looked at our existing property tax and they put a 2%, 2.5% surcharge on the existing property tax for the buildings worth more than $50,000 a year rental value. And so it was only the richer owners of buildings that would have to pay it, only within the GLA area. And that, over the years, will contribute £4 billion, 4.2 billion, towards the 16 billion of Crossrail. And you know, we didn't get any opposition from the owners of the buildings. We didn't get any opposition from the occupiers of the buildings. We didn't get any opposition from the conservative press. And that taught me a lesson there. I thought, well, that's not bad. So when the Labour Party put in their manifesto in 2017, we will reform the local property tax system that Ted was talking about only yesterday, was it, Ted? And we will replace it with something else. We'll investigate replacing it with something else, in brackets, e.g. a land value tax. So it was a very obscure mention of LVD. The press went mad. They're going to tax your garden. There's going to be a garden tax. And so my idea was, and I've spoken to politicians about this, let's go for the non-occupied residential land. So you leave out occupied residential land, let the government carry on with whatever tax system they want for that. But for land value tax, we'll go for 98% of the UK, it is not occupied residential land. I use the word occupied because that means you would tax empty homes, and it means that you would tax development sites. And I'm just going to finish.
That's good because when you finish, we're just going to go to lunch.
Oh,
because
right.
there's nothing else to be said.
Okay,
There's
well,
no time to say anything else.
so I went with my paper to John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, and said, look, you don't need to tell people you're going to tax their homes, just go for all the other land, and that will get the principle involved, you know, people will understand it, and they're not going to bother to vote against you because you're going to tax the business owners or landowners out in the countryside. And so that is what the Labour Party at the current time is saying. They will go for a reform of the business rates and business rates only, and that will be based on land value tax. You know, we're holding their feet to the fire and making sure the best we can that they will adopt, actually put that in their manifesto. The Lib Dems have a millionaire who has made money out of investing in 30 small start-up companies, and he's their business advisor for the Lib Dems. And last year, at their annual conference, he got them to adopt the idea of shifting business rates onto land value tax. And my last point is, today, in the Daily Telegraph, the right-wing newspaper, we call it the Daily Tory Graph because it's so right-wing. It's the one that pays Johnson £250,000 a year to write one article a week on a Monday morning and splashes that article on their front page as a news story. Today, they have published an article that says business rates should be changed to land value tax. That is
I'd just like to say that labor is like anybody else, that they have kids to raise, they have a job, they have they go to church, they have community projects that they're involved in, and they need a reason to get involved with us. We have a macro point of view, and they have a micro point of view. I'm guessing 99% of the people in this room vote, but I'm sure you're also well aware that about 50% of the public does not vote. And they may be your neighbors, and you can go, and we all think that's important. But they will probably say, I don't have time, or they might nod their head, yeah, I'll do it. But you haven't convinced them that they ought to get off the couch and go to vote. And that's what we're up against.
Okay.
More donations available. I'll do. Look, I'm just saying, I think what we should do is just, I was just talking to death.